We are here for the PGSS 2017 Elections Debate. These are the candidates who are running for elections, and I will explain you briefly the format for the debate. Before we start off, I just request all of you, including the candidates, to put your cell phones on silent, because this entire thing will be recorded and it will be available on the PGSS YouTube channel. The format for the debate would be that every candidate will get 2 minutes each to introduce themselves. Within that 2 minutes, they can also talk about a little bit about what they are running and what the campaign is all about. Then every candidate will get 5 minutes each for their own pitch. And so I will have those 5 minutes each. I will combine them for specific positions which they are running for. So if I have two candidates running for the Internal Affairs Officer, then both of them will come forward, have 5 minutes each, and then I'll give them 1.5 minutes each for their rebuttals. And then the floor will be open for the audience to ask them any questions. Please direct the questions to the specific member you are asking for, and they get 30 seconds to respond. After this entire event is over, I will open the floor to the media, to the Tribune, the members here, to ask any questions to any specific candidate. So I hope with that thing, we'll start off. We'll start off in no specific order, but since we have two candidates who are running specifically, who are the only candidates running for that position, so I'll start off with the candidate running for the Secretary General to please come forward and take us 2 minutes. Once the 2 minutes are over, I'll give a small bell like this, and that's the time. Please wind up and come back on your seat.
Hi everyone. So I'm going to take these 2 minutes just to introduce myself very quickly, and then I'll go into more details about what I would plan to work on in the next year. So my name is Lavigne. I am originally from Montreal. I'm a francophone. I did a DEC in health sciences. I then went to Mount Allison University in New Brunswick and did an undergraduate degree in biology. And now I am at McGill doing a PhD in experimental surgery, specifically on hip fractures. I have experience here at PGSS. This year I have the opportunity to serve as External Affairs Officer and have been working on a variety of different portfolios, mainly related to external representation of graduate students to the government through federations. So PGSS is not affiliated to a federation, so I've been observing a number of different groups, seeing who the best candidate for us is. So that's a very brief summary about who I am. And if you have any questions about that, feel free to ask me later, but I'll be speaking about my portfolio in a minute. So thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Is it okay if we hold the applause, actually?
That's fine. It doesn't bother anyone.
I appreciate it.
It encourages everyone. So.
Hi, I'm Steve Beukema. I'm one of the candidates for the Internal Affairs Officer position for PGSS this year. So a little bit about myself. I am currently the VP Social of the Graduate Student Association for Neuroscience. I came to McGill about 2 years ago. I'm about halfway through my PhD in the McGill Vision Research Unit at the Montreal General Hospital. My research focuses on sort of the clash between objective reality and our subjective perceptions. I've always been obsessed with illusions, so I've tried to intertwine that into my research. I've been obsessed with illusions because a couple of my hobbies, one of them involves being a magician, sleight of hand card tricks. The other being a musician. And although it might not seem relevant to this on the surface, I believe that these are inherently relevant to being an internal affairs officer, because it's all about being an entertainer, giving people what they want, making people happy, and just knowing what to do basically to bring joy to others. So hopefully in my 5-minute pitch, I'll be able to demonstrate how I plan to do that. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Hocine Slimani. I'm a postdoc here at McGill, and I'm considered a student. So I'm part of PGSS, which is a great thing for me because I landed here in McGill in November, and I went to that orientation day in January, And first thing I did was to find a PGSS member, happened to be Mina. It's like, I want to get involved, you know. The thing is that I'm a postdoc in neuroscience. I did my PhD in biomedical sciences at Université de Montréal, but most of my time being a PhD student, I spent it in Denmark and Belgium and Italy, where I've seen how the system is for students there, and how advanced we are here compared to some countries, and how late we are compared to others. So that was my main motivation into applying for an executive position, which is how to improve PGSS members' well-being, especially on the political side. That's why I applied for the External Affairs Officer position. I'll be able to give you more details about my platform in a minute. Thank you.
Hello everybody, thank you for coming in tonight. My name is Matthew Satterthwaite. I'm very happy to tell you that I'm running for the position of Financial Affairs Officer. I've been at McGill since 2012. I just started my master's this year though. I'm working at the MNI in neuroscience doing research on human decision making. I study how people make decisions in a neuroeconomic context, how people decide to spend money, what food items people decide to eat, and what kind of factors influence the way people make decisions. I've been involved at McGill since I started here in 2012 during my undergrad. I used to be the president of my faculty, which was the Faculty of Arts and Science, BANSC, so I've been very, very involved with admin through that role and in student governance on campus. Last year I had the privilege of being an arts and science representative to the Student Society of McGill University, where I also sat on the board of directors. That was a very challenging role because the board of directors is in charge of pretty much everything the society does, including the legal aspect of the society and the human resources aspect of the society. And then this year, now that I'm a PGSS member, I have gotten involved with the PGSS. I represent neuroscience at PGSS Council, so I recognize a lot of faces here from neuroscience and council. I'm also involved with Mina on the Internal Affairs Committee, where I've had the chance to work with a fantastic executive on planning events for the PGSS. All this experience, I think, is really what defines my candidacy. I will be able to come in from day one into the role and really make a positive impact on the position on PGSS. I look forward to telling you more about my platform in my 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming in. My name is Thomas Colbourne. I'm a philosophy student doing his PhD right now. I'm studying Spinoza and the German Idealists, which is kind of a vague topic for some people, but it's fun and I enjoy it. This year I've been on CGPS, which is a committee for graduate and postdoctoral studies, as well as APC, and I've been the council representative for my PGSA. So all the things combined have given me experience both on what the academic affairs officer will be doing and will allow me kind of to enter the position from day one with an experience and a know-how to actually get the ball rolling on the things that I actually want to cover. I'll tell you more about that later. I don't think I have more that I want to add, just that I've had experience with the position, various kind of roles associated with it, and I think that I'll be able to do a good job representing your interests next year. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mansha Imtiyaz, and I'm really excited to be here today. I'm running for the position of Internal Affairs Officer because I have the experience, I have ideas, and I'm really passionate about working together with students to achieve the same goal together. I'm a master's student in computer science at McGill, and I am an active PGSS member, and I have been involved with the committee, Internal Affairs Committee, since September 2016. Along with the rest of committee, I've helped in organizing a lot of events this year, including Fall Halloween Party, Winter Orientation Week, and the International Board Games Night. One of the main responsibilities of Internal Affairs Officer is to organize events. Students take out time from their busy schedules, they come to our events, they meet new people, and they build lifelong relationships. Being a part of committee, I have seen how our events have a direct impact on the lives of these students, and this is what motivates me, and this is the reason why I'm running for this position. Besides this, I'm also involved with Thompson Center for Entrepreneurship and helping in the logistics and helping the logistics of events and workshops. So I'm qualified for this position because I have been involved with student groups since my undergraduate. So I hope that you have taken time to look at my platform, and I hope that I'm able to answer your questions this evening. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I'm Shufeng. I'm running for the Academic Affairs Officer position at PGSS. I graduated from a Chinese medical university, and then I came to McGill, studied for a master's degree. And now I'm a fourth-year PhD student in the Department of Experimental Surgery. I have multicultural educational background. I have studied at several universities. This allows me to understand the difference between the universities and how the students are supported by universities. I have multidisciplinary research experience, and I have managed 8 scientific research projects and published 12 papers. I'm an unbiased person in my department. I was vice president of the Student Society in Chinese Medical University. I'm interested in this position because I strongly believe that students should have a central voice in their education. Feedback from the student is important to improve the academic performance. This position is about our education, but not politics, and should represent all the students' voice to the university. Tonight, as a candidate of this position, I'm going to talk about the important issue faced by the McGill community. You have to judge me whether I can shoulder this responsibility of this position or not. I hope I will be able to win your votes. Thank you very much.
All right, now we are here for the main event. So every candidate will come forward. They will get 5 minutes each to give a pitch. So we'll start off with the candidate running for Secretary General, which is Jacob there.
Lavigne.
Can you give him the mic right? I don't know if it's plugged in.
Do you guys hear me? Am I good?
Yeah, but I don't know.
Can you use the mic? That would be great, just for the recording purpose. You can use this one. This is a wireless one. That's much better. You can like position it wherever
Walk
you want
around.
it to be. Yeah.
I hate holding mics up. Hi again.
All right,
Is
so
that
your
better?
5 minutes starts now.
Hey guys, so I'd like to talk to you about my portfolio for next year. I can break it down into 4 main things, but I just want to say ahead of time that these are not all of the things that I'd be working on. There are many, many things that fall under the Secretary General's portfolio, but these are the key 4 priorities I think affect students the most. So I'd like to start off with advocating for graduate student spaces. So McGill has been looking to expand its campus and to maintain its infrastructure, and I believe that this should be done in the most socially responsible way, and that by advocating to the university administration, these goals can be accomplished. So that's moving towards the Victoria Hospital instead of expanding into other university campuses, which has been seen negatively when one university does it to the other. There's a lot of negative competition, but also advocating for new spaces to be accessible to those with disabilities, which we all know is an issue here at McGill, but also to ensure that it moves towards the carbon neutral objective of the university, so making it the most sustainable possible. The next item on my list is to foster a culture of innovation here at PGSS, and this would be continuing the work of the current Secretary General to create more networking opportunities and professional development opportunities. So by offering a variety of sources, resources, hosting a number of events like hackathons, startup weekends, and really having Thompson House serve as interdisciplinary headquarters for innovation at PGSS. There are a lot of issues with the world that we live in, and I think that as students we can really take part in taking part of the change, really being the change we see in the world, if you will. The next issue is tackling issues faced by international students. So as External Affairs Officer, I've been exposed to these issues, and I'd like to continue working on them. So I'd like to lobby the government for international student access to the RAMQ health insurance, and ensure the needs of students having difficulties due to the policies of the American president have the needs of have the resources they need to overcome their problems. Another one is improving the retention of international students and issues related to their tuition. So other than that, lastly, I'd like to talk about mental health on campus and how we can improve them. So I'd like to work with the administration to improve mental health on campus by increasing the number of services, but also their capacity, by increasing the awareness of these services. But I think really what we should be moving towards is preventing mental illness on campus to start off with. There are reasons why students are so stressed, and instead of preventing the illnesses, instead of preventing the symptoms of the illnesses, we should be preventing the illnesses, period. We need to look at education, how we can reform it, and by sitting on Senate, it gives you an amazing opportunity to push for experiential learning opportunities and other ways in which student stress can be really alleviated and can give more flexibility to the students' curriculum to allow them to work at their own pace and to suffer less from these mental illnesses. So if you have any other questions, and this is really a short list of the things that I would like to work on next year. I started off with 10 and I had to boil it down. I condensed many. So if you have any questions, feel free to talk to me about them. I have numerous interests, and that's kind of why I want to be Secretary General. A lot of interest. So if you have any questions, shoot.
Thank you, Jacob. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to ask a question to the candidate running for Secretary General? If you have, please raise your hand and go for it.
Does it go to Mike? I just
Project.
but I can project.
No, that's okay. There you go. There you go.
Hi there. So I'm Andrew Dixon. I'm a current health commissioner with PGSS. So I like what you said about the socially responsible expansion of campus. And one of the important concepts that we talk about these days is universal design and universal accessibility of our campus space. So I was wondering what kind of places on campus you thought had the largest need for universal design.
So I don't think that there's a specific area, but I think that as campuses expand, there's a sort of sprawl of resources around campus, and they can be hard to access. And so the key is ensuring that all resources are easily accessible. And I really think that mental illness and mental health services should be the easiest to access. Other than that, what you need to access to prevent mental illness is also important. So having quick access to a gym, quick access to a library, space where you can study, space where you can have your zone, where you can close yourself off, maybe take a nap, have open discussions with different people. They're just having all the resources together, and I think that the Royal Victoria Hospital campus would be an amazing opportunity to put all of these resources close together, and without requiring students to have to go from one campus to the other just to access mental health issues. Mac campus students are suffering because they don't have access to everything. We need to, if we're going to sprawl, then there need to be more headquarters everywhere.
Mina Anandilu, Internal Affairs Officer. My question is regarding the recent events happening at SMU where an executive very publicly stepped down following certain allegations of assault. I'm wondering if you have anything in mind to address anything like this that may come up at PGSS to protect our executive or members so that something like this does not happen. And are there any measures put in place to protect people who work here and also our members, people who frequent this house?
Absolutely. So immediately when the incident happened, when the press releases were made, an idea that came to mind is if the McGill policy does not cover PGSS, we should have our own, but retrospectively, the McGill policy does affect us, so there are regulations in place to ensure that we act professionally and that we act according to their policy. Something else I've been thinking about is creating a zero tolerance violence policy for executives and commissioners and staff at PGSS. Any aggression, any form of harassment from one to the other would not be tolerated whatsoever. But as for issues pertaining to an executive and an outsider who is not an executive, that falls within the McGill policy. And as Secretary General, it would be my responsibility to follow through with any consequences of bad behavior, if you want to call it that. Calling it very lightly. But Just to follow the policy of the university, ensure that you're taking action.
Hi.
Are you a member of the media?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll be opening the floor at the end of the debate, so you can ask any questions as long as, because they have a 20-second time limit to respond to the members of the audience.
My name is Victor, current Secretary General of PGSS. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that nobody knows about at PGSS. Some things that people don't know about just because they can't know about it. Issues of confidentiality, as well as other issues that just are not visible. Less to the academic environment, less to responsibilities to the McGill community, which you've answered some of those questions, but a lot of it is helping people work together well. And it's also helping to manage human resources here at Thompson House. What skills do you have? What preparations do you have? And how would you help to manage crises that will come up in your term in working with people that are both part of your executive team, but also working with people that are employees of Thompson House as a corporation?
So one thing that I think of myself as is very objective and critical. I can criticize myself from one sentence to the other. I'm my own devil's advocate. And what's the most important in conflict resolution is the ability to be objective and neutral and stay in this position that everyone in an argument has a valid opinion and it's discerning the truth behind it. And until you know that truth, you have to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. But one thing that I do know from past experiences, whether it's family issues or teamwork, I've been very good at sitting down with each member of a conflict and ensuring that they give me their side of the story, and I will cross-check. And until that's done, I'm not giving anyone a doubt worth more than someone else's. I consider myself to be very unbiased, and so I think that's really the most important part of being Secretary General and putting out the fires without making a big scene. And I, from past experiences, know that that's a skill that I have.
Is there anyone else? All right, thank you, Jake.
Can I ask another question?
Sure, go for it.
I could continue my things after about some stuff.
So I have a question, again, as it pertains to the spread out campus. So currently, a lot of our students, especially graduate students, are spread out amongst various sites, including the Glen site, including Mac campus, including the Douglas Institute, and the list goes on. One of the challenges that we encounter is our inability to provide the same services to those remote sites as we do to students that are downtown. So as Secretary General, what do you think would be one of the ways that you would address the needs of the students at these remote sites, and how would you try to bring together the PGSS community?
So before moving to satisfying existing campuses, the university wants to expand currently, and if they don't go towards the Royal Victoria Hospital, they're going to go elsewhere. And my real interest is ensuring that we do not expand beyond McGill near the proximal campus, to ensure that we don't run into situations where we have to satisfy two campuses. But now, dealing with the two campuses that we have at the moment, there are certain services that they just can't get because they don't have enough numbers, but that could be solved by creating partnerships with different institutions that are out there, with the community. There are numerous solutions, as Mina has been working on an app to promote ride sharing. There are a lot of creative solutions that can be found to ensure that they have access to the resources they need. The reality of it is that they may not have the numbers required to attract certain services, but there is definitely enough people out in the West Island to create other services or to ensure that they can get transport between the two campuses. And so it's something that would need creativity, but but related to that is ensuring that more campuses aren't created. The Royal Vic is right there. Let's ensure that we get it.
Any other questions? All right, thank you,
Can I
Jacob.
take my 2 minutes to explain my experiences? Like, I didn't go through that.
We'll do it later on because.
Yeah, can I take that 2 minutes? Like that, my
No,
questions.
not yet,
like,
because you don't have any other candidate running for your candidacy for this position.
so I can ask myself, like, what have you done?
Just so you know, Cameron and Brittany,
We'll discuss that. So next we're going to deal with External Affairs Officer. We only have one candidate for that, so let's get started.
My notes are on this, so it's not me texting. So yeah, I have something prepared, but I don't like to read it. What motivated me the most to apply to this position is my experience in Europe as an international student first, and after 5 years being there, especially in Denmark, I could see how things work for Danes as well. So what I have in mind is a total paradigm change, but these things take time. It will go beyond my mandate and many external affairs officers to come. But I hope to set the milestones in order to get there. One of the first things that I noticed in Denmark when I arrived there was that I was right away appointed to a family doctor. I was right away, I had all the healthcare benefits that any Dane could get. We're still far from it here. I doubt that we can do it within the next year, but it's definitely the direction to move forward to. Then you get into the system, and then you realize that every student up to the master's level has approximately $1,000 a month to study, which is a great thing. We have similar programs from the government here, but they still need improving. A lot of students end up with huge loans at the end of their studies, and it's not the greatest thing for them. So hopefully, through representation with the different federation, improve the bursary and loans programs. When it comes to PhD students, they're considered employees. There's this kind of transition happening right now with postdocs, but in my opinion, it's really badly handled. Postdocs, for those who are not aware, just got a change in their status. They went from being students to employees, but their situation did not change. All of a sudden, 1/3 of their take-home money got evicted by taxation and all kinds of plans like parental plans, pension plans, and so on, which is, conceptually, it makes sense because you're starting your career, but there are a lot of laws, especially federal laws, that kind of contradict that status change. For example, there's a federal law stating that you cannot be a postdoc for more than 5 years. So how can a postdoc considered an employee bargain for a tenureship when he knows that he has only 5 years as a postdoc and that's it? So there are a lot of things that's one small details amongst tons of them. Unfortunately, PGSS cannot represent postdocs that have made the switch to employees, but there's definitely some changes we can make through student federations and governmental lobbying in order to at least make them aware that this change is not without bad consequences. I've seen people crying because all of a sudden they came to Montreal as a foreign postdoc, and their PI decided to reduce their contract to 1 year instead of 2 because the PIs also have to pay for the benefits and their funds are limited. So this is a huge issue. It's actually, for me, it's a great timing as a postdoc to be an external affairs officer for that matter, so because I'm hands-on on it. And also I have this international student experience that allows me to take what's best from other countries in order to bring up good arguments at the governmental level.
Any questions that you may have? Yeah, go for it.
Hi, I am a PhD student at the Biomedical Engineering Department. I like that you have a different perspective and that you're bringing some of your experiences from Europe, because I think a lot of students get dealt with better in certain respects, and it's good to see that perspective. And I like that you're a postdoc, because I think a lot of PGSS students tend to be PhD and master's students. It's good to see a postdoc involved. The question I have for you, though, is the Quebec context. So you talk about the European context, and you talk about other. So you're going for external affairs officer,
yeah,
right? So how do you plan to fit your plans and ideas within the Quebec context? And talking about the affiliation ideas and different associations that are coming to PGSS and saying, join us. How do you, because I imagine that will be one of the major issues during your time potentially as external professor.
Exactly.
How
So,
do you view this?
yeah, that's a really relevant question because we're still in North America, and the values, the social values in Europe and in North America are kind of opposed. But in Quebec, we have this. We're like in the middle of it, kind of. We have, especially in Montreal, we're this platform that is halfway between Europe and North America, so we can benefit from the best of both. And to make a long story short, I would say that Quebec and Denmark are very, very similar culturally, in terms, also in terms of number of people in the population, their social values, and so on. There's a lot of similarities between the two societies. So I don't think it would be so much of a struggle to push forward ideas that come from there. Following the Scandinavian model is something that the Quebec government has been doing for years. So it wouldn't be easy, but it would be easier than trying to implement something from another continent.
If I may ask a follow-up question.
Yeah.
So from my time at PGSS and looking at the way that, like looking at the backdrop of the student protest in Quebec, the role of McGill within Quebec as a university is unique because we're not like the other universities in Quebec. In many ways we are, but in many ways we're not. And you know, what happens in Quebec with respect to the government and student decisions and protests, because the student protest happened and tuition fees got frozen, and then universities didn't get funding from the government and research schools like McGill suffered. So how do you approach that now as you try to affiliate? How do you approach the other Quebec universities? How will you try to maintain McGill's unique role, but also try and bring in some of these ideas?
I would say that being a francophone and having French as my mother tongue will help a lot, because that would be, not speaking French would be a great barrier, especially with other universities in Quebec. And the thing is that I think I have enough experience just by being a student to be kind of objective and be more pragmatic and less idealistic on how things should work, or what I think things should work like. I only have 30 seconds. We could go at length with this, but I would say that I'm in a pretty good position to rally and to bring on the same wavelength opinions that would oppose francophones to anglophones, for example.
Does anyone? Yeah, go for it.
Eric Larson, I'm a PhD student in neuroscience. My question actually is about postdocs. Cool. So you hinted at the challenge that both PIs and students are having now with the new status of postdocs. PIs are paying more and postdocs are receiving less because of taxation and a laundry list of other reasons. In the short term, I know a lot of postdocs are feeling the crunch immediately. So do you have any solutions for the short term, in the short term context? In the long term, this could in fact make postdocs less attractive in Quebec, because PIs are going to have to pay more for them without a corresponding increase in grants at the federal level, and postdocs won't be getting as much money. So do you have any ideas about how we should move forward with this, both at the provincial, the institutional level, and the federal level?
Yeah, well, for the short term, I think, I'm not sure, but I heard that other universities found a way to bypass the status change. And I hope to find out pretty soon, even before, because I mean, I've been talking with Jacob about this already. Hopefully, because I'm a postdoc, I'm in it. Hopefully we'll find a quick trick, a loophole that we could use to save those postdocs from being unionized and being employees. In the long run, it would be first to make the government aware that it's a huge mistake. You can't just change the law without having the net to support these people. We're 600 postdocs at McGill, and it's a lot of people that are unhappy at the moment. What's really hard is that PGSS cannot even talk to unionized postdocs, so all we can do is try to go directly to the government and just bring up some awareness on what are the important issues for them, without interfering with the union's mandate.
Anyone else who would like to ask a question? All right, thank you. So next we move on to the Financial Affairs Officer. I guess Matthew is the only one. So come forward, Matthew. You have 5 minutes.
Okay. I want to start off by giving you a bit of information and background about what the Financial Affairs Officer actually does. A lot of people just think that the Financial Affairs Officer just makes the budget and then signs the check, but there's a lot more behind the scenes work that the Financial Affairs Officer must do. This was hinted at by our current Secretary General. There's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes that not a lot of people know about, and the Financial Affairs Officer is very involved in these matters. So the FAO, I'll call it the FAO for short, it's getting to be a mouthful, but the FAO is very crucial to society because this person has a seat on both the Executive Committee and the Board of Directors. The Board of Directors is the highest body of the society that deals with legal matters of the society, financial matters, human resource matters, everything like that. So it's very, very important to have somebody in this position that can work with the Secretary General and the remainder of the board to make sure that everything is going well with the society. Other than these important board responsibilities, the FAO is also in charge of the budget, of optimizing and monitoring the funds, the loans, and the payments and investments of the PGSS, and chairing the Committee of Monetary Affairs and dispersing all the funds that the PGSS collects. I previously hinted that my experience had prepared me well for this role because I have been exposed to a board of directors before. I spent a year on the board of SMU, and I have dealt with all of these same issues. So I would be able to come into the position right away and deal with all these sensitive, sometimes confidential, and very, very important issues to the PGSS. I want to move on now to what I actually want to accomplish in my term as Financial Affairs Officer. My platform has been summed up into 4 points. The first one being increasing the financial transparency of the society. I also want to create an ethical investment policy. I want to develop the sponsorship activities of the PGSS and increase the support the PGSS offers to our members and our PGSAs. So for the first point of increasing financial transparency, I feel as though students have the right to know where their money is going and how PGSS is spending their money. As a student this year, I was very curious about that, and I looked at the PGSS website, and unfortunately none of the documents are updated. There's no up-to-date budget unless you actually go through the council minutes and find the budget in the Financial Affairs Officer report. The most recent audited financial statement is from 2011. There's no minutes from the Executive Committee and from the Board of Directors posted on the website. So with my seat on the Executive Committee and on the board, I would make sure that the PGSS is being as transparent as possible for both those committees, but also all of our finances. I'll be posting updated budgets regularly and also fund balances, financial statements, everything that I think would be beneficial to our students to know. Because again, students have the right to know where the money's going. And of course, I'd be collaborating with the Secretary General to make sure that the board is as transparent as possible. My second point for the ethical investment policy, the PGSS does have a diversified investment portfolio. This current year, there's about $6,000 that's been invested by the PGSS, but it's unclear towards where those funds are being invested. There's no regulation right now as to what the PGSS is actually investing in, what kind of companies, what kinds of industries. And I feel as though it's important for us to develop a policy, so the ethical investment policy that offers the PGSS regulations and guidelines as to where we're investing our money to make sure that all of our investments are in line with the mandates of our society. My third point of developing the sponsorship activities of the PGSS. I see within Thompson House and within all the activities that the PGSS runs a wealth of untapped sponsorship opportunity. There's very limited sponsorship activity going on right now within the society, so we're ending up having to pay a lot more out of pocket and charge our students a lot more money for these events, when a lot of these costs could be subsidized through sponsorship. So I would, to help with this increase in sponsorship, I would like to create a designated position for this. I would work to create a sponsorship commissioner that would be focused solely on recruiting sponsorship for the PGSS. This could also be accomplished through a sponsorship committee, which would be within the financial affairs portfolio. I don't know exactly which one I prefer right now. This would be up to discussion at council next year and through the executive. But I think both of these options are very good options for the PGSS to increase our revenue. I do have substantial sponsorship background. I have been the sponsorship coordinator for the Science Undergraduate Society Orientation Week and also the Arts and Science Orientation Week, so I do have some experience there, which would be able to help me accomplish these goals. My final point, to increase the support for our PGSAs. I've been meeting with PGSAs this week and last week and chatting to a lot of their presidents and VP finances. And currently the financial relationship between us and our departments is just we give them a check twice a year and that's about it. I think the PGSS could be offering a lot more support to our PGSAs. A lot of them have told me that they weren't sure how to make a budget when they came into the position. They weren't sure what funds were available to them and how we would actually give them the money and where their students' money was going. So I would create a financial roundtable with the VP finances of all the PGSAs to keep them updated on this, and would also create a financial newsletter that would be sent out once a month to all the VP finances with updates on budget, funds, and any deadlines or information they need to know. Sorry for going overboard. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone who wants a question? Go for it. Go to come back.
Yeah, it's actually great. You seem to know a lot about lots of things, and it's great. I honestly didn't know that we had an investment portfolio. No, I really didn't. Like, when we were working on divestment at the university, I know SMU divested from fossil fuels, and we had looked into it, and I was told that we didn't have like a stock portfolio. It was just invested into banks. But I like all that I hear. I think one of the things that the Committee on Monetary Affairs also helps to do is help with the internal affairs officer, help to manage the budgets. I really like the ideas of the sponsorships, managing the sponsorships. I think it's a natural fit for the financial affairs officer to recruit, help the internal recruit sponsorships, take a bit of the load away from that position and fold it onto yours. I guess my question is, when you're dealing with grant applications, the Committee on Monetary Affairs, which you chair as Financial Affairs Officer, needs to make hard decisions on which programs we're going to be funding that students apply for every month. Given that it's a limited budget, what type of things do you think are the priorities of the special projects that we fund through the grants program?
So in I think in the SAM, there is a list of criteria for projects out of this fund, and there's an order of how we should consider these funds. I don't know off the top what the order is, but I know that there is provisions for that in our documents. So I would definitely apply them very to the letter with the committee, make sure that we're actually following the order as laid out in our bylaws, sorry, not our bylaws, but our SAM. I have a lot of experience with legal documents. During my time at McGill, I've written 3 constitutions and various other policies, so I definitely know my way around them and would make sure that it's applied 100%.
Great.
Mina Ndulu, Internal Affairs Officer. So you mentioned that the Financial Affairs Officer sits on the Board of Directors as well as the Executive Committee. And at times, I'll talk about my personal experience where the business activities of the society, and when I say business, we're a non-profit organization, but running of Thompson House, the restaurant, bar, etc., come against or is always like business versus society or corporate activities versus society activities. And as the financial affairs officer, you will most likely be in the middle of this conversation. How do you think you're prepared to handle this kind of challenge? Do you think that corporate activities are more important than society activities, or how do you think you will resolve these kinds of issues when they come up?
So one of the main purposes of the PGSS is to offer services to our students and to advocate for our students, all that kind of stuff. So I believe that the society is what's most important, but you can't have a properly functioning society without a strong corporation to back it up. So there of course has to be a balance there to figure out, okay, what can we offer to our students? Can we offer this as long as it's not hurting our corporate activities? There's definitely a balance that will have to be found there through discussion with the executive, through different discussions at council. One of the things that I find that we don't do enough this year is we're not getting enough mandates through council to do certain things. And if there comes to a time where there is a hard decision that needs to be made by the financial affairs officer and the executive committee, I would look to bring a motion up to council to actually have council vote on what they think we should do in this particular situation, as long as it's not confidential and we can actually talk about it. By moving forward with feedback from our counselors and from their PGSAs, we know that what we're doing is definitely in the best interest of our students. And I think that's the number one priority, is watching out for our students.
I'm Ann Jackson, I think you guys know that now. So I have a question regarding the postdoc situation. So as you know, postdocs do pay PGSS fees, and so next year we will probably be losing a significant portion of those postdocs that are now going to be unionized and enter a separate category. So I was wondering what kind of solutions you had going forward to ensure the financial sustainability of that lost revenue.
Yeah, so there's actually 2 points that I want to address here. The first is about the legal case with Canadian Federations of Students. We found out from our Secretary General at the last council meeting that this case is now over, that the PGSS did get a settlement from this. But what this means, though, is that in the budgets for previous years, a lot of money has been allocated towards legal fees and all these different expenses associated with this case. We no longer have to pay those expenses now that this case is over. So that would cover up part of the lost revenues from the postdocs. I would make sure that that's allocated properly to different parts of the budget that need it. As well, with one of my campaign points with the sponsorship commissioner, hopefully this increase in revenue will make up for some of this lost revenue from postdocs.
That's a follow-up question. So currently law students and medical students pay an associate membership fee, which gives them access to the house and to our services. Would you be interested in perhaps offering postdocs a similar arrangement?
We can definitely look into that. I hadn't thought about it, but that's a great suggestion. A lot of postdocs are very intertwined in the PGSS community within their labs, and I see a lot of them here all the time. So that would be an interesting solution that I look forward to discussing with my fellow executives and with council.
Is anyone else with a question? Yep, go for it. Could you please pass the mic?
I like the idea of increased transparency with regards to budgets. After sitting through a couple of council budget summaries, I realized the challenge for the person presenting the budget and also the challenge for the people trying to absorb the budget. And as much as I like the idea of putting it on the website, I'm wondering, how do you envision, how do you plan to make that accessible? What have you seen that has worked well for clarifying for people who are done in town? What exactly do you plan to do?
Well, with the first point about it being difficult for people to actually absorb all this information all at once, a lot of the time students are seeing the budget for the first time as they're sitting in this council meeting or at the general meeting. So that's hundreds of lines potentially of information to take in. That's very hard. So by ensuring that all the documents are posted well enough in advance of time, that allows students enough time to actually go through the budget and come up with specific questions about items that they want to address. And as well with the financial roundtable that I plan to create. That would be a body where I could discuss the budget with VP Finance and Presidents of PGSAs, and that information kind of trickle down to their executives and their constituents.
Anyone else? All right, thank you, Matthew.
Thank you.
All right, now we go down next to the Academic Affairs Officer. So if both of you could please come forward. Yep.
First real debate style.
Yeah, now the fun part begins. So
No more monologues.
we'll start off with 5 minutes each for each candidate, and they will get 1.5 minutes for rebuttal, both of them, and then the floor will be open for questions from the audience. So let's start off with Thomas. Here.
Okay.
All right, your time starts now.
Okay, so one of the main things you do as an academic affairs officer is advocacy. So what I try to do if I get the position is I try to represent your interest, and what that requires is getting enough feedback from the different groups, the different members of PGSS in order that I can actually represent your interests. If I don't know what they are, then I won't be in a position to actually advocate for you. So one of the concerns that I have is trying to set up or use the lines that we have in place right now to make sure that there's communication between the academic affairs officer and the members that we're representing, preferably through like already established channels. Now with that being said, I do have items that I do want to address. There's three in general. One of them has to do with professional development. The other has to do with study spaces and the library fund. And the third one has to do with funding and supervision. So the first one, professional development, I want to work to try to increase our professional development within various departments on McGill. So kind of what that means is looking at the kind of different tools that we already have in place, such as CAPS and skill sets, seeing how they work, see what kind of feedback we've gathered from them, and how we can improve them to make sure that different students are actually offered the skills they need, that when they go onto the job market, they're going to be competitive. So in part, that might be for something like skill sets, making sure that we're providing them on all the different campuses at McGill, not just a downtown location, making them more readily accessible. Another issue that I want to deal with and approach is the issue of course exclusions. So there was a recent change in the relation between the Course Lecturers Union and the McGill administration that makes it much more difficult for different departments to actually allocate teaching opportunities to their graduate students. And this is a very important thing because without teaching opportunities, certain departments aren't able to prepare their graduate students to be kind of professionally viable. When they go out onto the job market, if they don't have teaching experience, then they're not going to be able to get a position. So I want to make sure that we push the administration to address this issue and make sure that we're able to offer our graduate students teaching opportunities within their placement here. So that's the first one. The second one is study spaces. So right now we pay in $6 a year to the Library Development Fund, and we're currently sitting on about $350,000 that we could use to develop our library and study spaces. Now what I want to do is I want to work with the Dean of Students, Colleen Cook, and make sure that this money actually goes into developing our libraries and ensures that we have enough study spaces, kind of office spaces that we can kind of have one-to-one relations. Right now I find as a TA within my department, I'm in a kind of unideal situation where when we're actually offering office hours for the TA position, we have to do it in a crowded office with multiple people, and this is not ideal. So by having kind of office space that different students can rent out, or not rent out, sorry, but can book for certain periods of time, we're going to be able to increase both our TA, like our ability to perform our TA position, and also our ability to study. And another thing that I want to do with the library space is have kind of more general open study spaces. So this would be going forward when we develop the libraries to make sure that we actually have the kind of spaces required on campus to make sure that we can really fulfill all of our academic interests. And finally, in regards to supervision and funding, I want to advocate for kind of, well, again, everybody knows, without funding, we're not going to be able to perform our tasks. Funding is essential to make sure that we can have ideal academic performance. And so I want to make sure that we have kind of realistic expectations being put towards the administration to ensure that, for instance, we have every student on McGill, every representative or member of PGSS has enough funding to actually continue forward. So that's something like 3-year funding packages, stuff like ensuring that maybe there's a cap on the amount of funding that you receive. So if a student gets SHRP or another grant, the funding that would be allocated to them normally could be allocated to other students that need it. And just to make sure that all of our members of PGSS find the funding they need to actually excel in their degree. And as for supervision, I want to just make sure that our kind of like get to know your supervisor, the kind of different programs that we have in place through CAPS and skill sets are going to be actually attended more regularly, so that when people have conflicts with their supervisors, they know what avenues and approaches they can take to resolve the issues. Thank you.
If I am elected, I would like to work on the following issue. The first issue is to improve the student feedback system. I will work with McGill administration and PGSA representatives to build up a system in which everyone's feedback is taken seriously by the university and make the feedback procedure readily available, practical, and fully transparent. I will ensure that PGSS represents students' voice to the university. The second issue is about how to improve our library space and student academic activity center. We can renovate some parts of the old Royal Victoria Hospital into a secondary library, student academic centers, and student residence. I will work with the PGSS Library Improvement Funding Committees, Government Funding Office, and the Secretary General to initiate this project and to support campaigns to acquire funding for this project. We are also going to raise funding from donations. A novel electronic screen will be installed in the main entrance of the new library in complex and could be used to honor people who financially support this project. For example, if Thomas, you donate $200 to the new library, we will take your picture and write your name and the money you donated to put the screen data system and put the screen to honor you forever. And thirdly, I would like to provide more opportunities for international students. I would like to work with McGill Administration Department and the International Student Office to launch a new program, Pre-McGill, a 1-year training program to help international students to prepare to study at McGill. This would greatly help the international students, potentially international students, and bring more international students and increase the university's income. I will also work with skill sets to offer workshops to address the following issues, such as how to make a public speech, how to manage your research project, and how to prepare your committee meetings and your PhD comprehensive exams. And I also want to address how to improve the supervision, student salary, and the career planning. I would like to work with the CAPS, MyTax, and other possible industry partners to bring more partnership from industry side and help to coordinate graduate students' project with the needs of these industries. This would allow students to make meaningful connections with the market and prepare them for their future employment after they finish their studies. And I also would like to address the management of scientific research facility. Many students cannot fund equipment for their research. I'm the big victim of this. I would like to hold discussions to address the following issue. How to improve the management of a research facility in a manner that would grant full access to the students who need these facilities. And I will try to find the solution for better management. Lastly, I will lobby the university to reopen the shuttle bus from Montreal General Hospital to the new green site, because a lot of students around this area still need the shuttle bus to go to the green site for their experimentals and the classes. Thank you very much.
Thomas, you have 1 minute 30 seconds for any rebuttals.
Can I ask questions? Is it all right?
You cannot ask questions,
Okay.
but you can rebut anything what the other candidate has said.
So one thing, I guess this is a question already. I wanted to, it seems like you want to kind of put new systems in place and to allow for increased feedback, but it appears to me that we already have kind of systems in place. We have emails, we have correspondence through various PGSA members, and it's really not a matter of like increasing new models for feedback, but using the kind of tools that we already have in place properly to hear back from the students. Secondly, second point, you mentioned that you wanted to kind of work with skill sets to offer certain programs, but it appeared to me that a lot of the things that you mentioned are things that are currently being offered by skill sets. So I'm not sure how much you can improve matters in that regard, because they are being offered, and the thing that seems pertinent is making sure that these are accessible and that they're adapting to feedback that are currently receiving from students. And finally, I wanted to know, I can't questions, but if you're moving forward with the kind of idea to make it easier for international students, I think it's pertinent to know kind of what other models in Canadian universities that have these sort of systems in place you've kind of observed and looked at and would like to model your program off of, just to make sure that we're kind of not moving forward blindly if you would proceed in that manner. Thank you.
And firstly, answer your first question, the student feedback system, currently student feedback system, I don't think it's very practical, And basically what we do, if at the end of the class, and someone come or send you email to write, do you like these classes? What do you think all this questionnaire? And if there is, and more important, if there is only less than half students to answer this questionnaire, this feedback is not going to be transparent, and nobody take it seriously. Unless the people answer this questionnaire over 1 to half of the students attending the class, they will be taken seriously. And also this feedback is not transparent, and we really don't know what's the real results. And for me, if I wanted to take this course or not take this course, I will ask students before I take this course, say, hey, how do you think this supervisor? How about you think this teacher? This class is interesting, you can learn a lot, it's difficult or not difficult? And then the people will tell me, but I cannot find any information from the McGill website or whatever official site. And for me, I would like to increase the feedback system, transparent of the feedback system. Also, I would like to create the real website to evaluate every professor, the student, and we completely open. The students evaluate, and the student can openly write the review about the professor. So it's not only professor should evaluate us, we also should evaluate the professor.
Thank you. Any questions?
Will she be able to ask these questions?
No. It's only one minute for 20 seconds, that's it. So when you ask a question, please let the candidates know if you're asking for a specific candidate, or are you asking a general question to both of them, then they will get 30 seconds each to answer them.
How does it work if it's a question to...
If it's a general question to both the candidates, they will get 30 seconds each to answer, one after the other. If in case you want to direct your question to one specific candidate, just let him know that this is only for you, and you can go ahead.
Okay. Thanks. So I have one general question for both candidates and a more specific question. So the academic affairs officer will work with people at graduate and postdoctoral studies, and will deal with people at the McGill level in trying to get things to change. Can you describe how, so you talked about a lot of the things that you want to do, but can you describe how you envision the process of pushing for some of these things to be? Like, how do you plan to work with people at McGill, and how do you plan to convince them to change things? Because there are things that will happen between you and students, but I think a lot of things that you want to do, you need McGill support for.
So that was let her start first.
I think the first time we needed to know what people really need, what real students need, and how the university can fix this solution. So you can ask a new question, you can ask a lot of questions, but still the reality is how we can deal with this. That's most important. We have to think of the reality, what we already have in our hand, and then find the real reality solution to solve these problems. Because the question is, what's exactly the question it is? It's so general, so we have to ask on specific questions.
Thank you, Thomas.
So it would probably depending on what you're trying to advocate for, which avenue is best to take. One of the kind of main strength that you have in the academic affairs officer position is you have a seat on Senate. And that allows you the opportunity to raise questions and get the administration to directly respond to pertinent issues and puts them on the record saying this is the case or this isn't the case. And that kind of lays the groundwork for future advocacy. But Senate isn't always going to be the appropriate body, so there's other committees, other bodies that are sometimes more pertinent, more tailored to specific issues. For instance, if we want to advocate for changes within study spaces or library spaces, we'd go through the Dean of Libraries. So you kind of have to know the layout of the different administrative bodies, the different administrative organizations, and kind of choose which avenues are most appropriate. But generally speaking, Senate is a very powerful forum for us.
Thanks. I had a follow-up question for you. So I like what you were saying about funding and pushing for more generic funding models for all graduate students. I guess I had a more practical question in terms of, so different departments have autonomy with regard to how they spend their money. And some faculties, like engineering, will write a check to all their students, but the department that I'm in will not do that because of their own unique needs. How do you plan to address the issue of departments having autonomy over how they spend their money? Like, how do you?
Yeah, that's a very difficult issue. So another example is, for instance, some people would like to advocate for ensuring that kind of TA work wouldn't count as your funding for your PhD or your graduate degree, and kind of having that as an off to the side. It's difficult because the funding goes through kind of different levels. It goes from the Quebec to the school board, right? And then from the McGill administration gets allotted to the faculties, and the faculties decide how they're going to do it. But I think you can kind of put pressure on the administration to set, if there are things that are generally good for all students, to put pressure on the administration to ensure that those things happen throughout the departments, to make it kind of mandatory. Obviously, you don't want to remove all the autonomy from the individual departments because, you know, if the department has less funding, they have to tailor things. So if you have less funding but you have a certain amount of graduate students, then you have to kind of find different avenues in order to bring in funding for your graduate students, so making it kind of completely generic isn't good. I guess what I'd want to mainly advocate for is that there's certain things that would probably be beneficial that if the administration committed itself to, but then they'd have to kind of guarantee that they give enough funding to the individual departments that they could ensure that it was effective.
Richard, you got a question?
Yep. So as an academic affairs officer, you would, either of you, not both, there can only be one.
Highlander rules.
You would be one of two representatives that PGSS has on the Academic Senate. You've spoken about a lot of the academic issues, but I think one of the most important policies passed this year at Senate was the policy on sexual violence. My question to both of you is, what do you see as the strengths of this policy? What do you see as the weaknesses of this policy? And what will you do as a member of the Academic Senate and an advocate for students that have been affected by sexual violence? What would you do to ensure that the McGill's administration does not try to cover its own in order to ensure that, okay, the problem is McGill does not want necessarily to report the statistics on sexual violence because it makes McGill look bad. But what the policy does is it tries to provide support for students. And it tries to change the academic nature in which students are reporting these things, especially when their attacker is another student or a faculty member or a staff member.
what would you do to ensure that the students' first priority is met by the university's administration? Question goes to both of you.
So we'll start with Thomas first.
So you asked right at the beginning what I thought the benefits were of this policy.
The strengths of the policy, the weaknesses of the policy,
Well,
and what do you ensure
one of the
that
strengths
it's
of the
correct?
policy is it's about goddamn time we have one, right? I mean, it's been forever in the works. I mean, there's a lot of good people that have been working on it, but it took the administration a long time to get this in place and get in a position where we now have a sexual violence policy. And I think that's fantastic, but there's still kind of shortcomings with it that we can work on. Now, what we can do to improve it, I think, is there's different committees and bodies put together to provide the administration with feedback so they could gather feedback and try to tailor as best as possible the policy to the interests of the different groups. And I think we have to kind of maintain these lines of communication and to really review the policy going forward to see kind of where its shortcomings are and how we can improve upon them. For instance, it might be a shortcoming that the policy doesn't have kind of universal jurisdiction on the McGill campus, that we want to make sure that it extends to other bodies such as PGSS and SSMU on McGill to make sure that everybody is protected. I also think that it's important to kind of just keep the ball rolling on making sure that we have the resources available to AIDS survivors and make sure that they can really, that when these events happen, that it doesn't have to be the end of their academic career and they can keep on going forward and they have the support within the academic community to do so.
Yeah, I think that's a very good issue. Actually, I really witnessed the sexual violence at the Julius General Hospital. And the thing is, they even go through the court, but still, as you said, Miguel don't want to expose this issue. And then the court said, both of you are adults, so there is no sexual violence because you're adults. So this is really important issue. And also, I'm also mentioning that sexual violence is not just women, man against women, and also sometimes the man also suffering that. We have to be careful about that. I think the most important issue to really be careful is about how we deal with this, how the two persons deal with this. If you said sexual violation, I think it's both sides things. If only one side, probably it's not going to happen, but there is both sides. Especially when that happens, what are we supposed to do? And I think it's so tricky questions. And most important is that, as you said, the solution and the resource to help the victim, that's most important. I saw the student crying in her roommate, in the rooms and crying, and then finally go to court and then got nothing, just feel so shame about this. So we have to first help the victim to overcome the shameness and then really set up the really resource to help them.
Thank you. Is there anyone else with any other question? Yeah, go for it.
So one of the most important, this is for both candidates, one of the most important roles of the Academic Affairs Officer, as mentioned, is to ensure representation. And one of their roles is working with the Health Commissioner and Membership Services Officer in order to provide representation to McGill services, including the mental health clinic, counseling clinic, and the health clinic as well. Given that we, as graduate students, are very spread out, a lot of students don't have access to these clinics or access to these services, and sometimes their voice isn't heard. What are some of the solutions that you can think of to address the needs of students that aren't on the downtown campus to make sure that those concerns are heard at these services?
Anyone? Right. Shufeng, go for it.
I think that we should increase the publicity of the PGSS because a lot of students, when I do my campaign, I go to talk to the students. People don't, I don't know why, people are not interested in the PGSS. Maybe the main reason is probably we didn't do very good job to represent the students. That's also the main motivation for me to join the PGSS. I want to make more students involved in PGSS activities. And like the CAPS, the skills needs. Also, a lot of students, they even don't want to be involved. Because one thing is maybe students don't want to be involved, and another thing is also let us think about maybe the service we provide is not good enough to attract our students to join us. So we should improve our service, improve our publicity to attract students. So that's a very, very difficult and big issue, how we can do that.
So I guess I could look for 3 things that I think I could do that would help. The first, I think, is to get in contact with the heads of the different PGSSs and make sure that we have a line of communication open between myself and them to ensure that their desires, their needs are actually going to be fulfilled and advocated for in my position and my role. Another thing that we could do, for instance, is Mac Campus could have a seat on Senate in order to make sure that their specific concerns are going to get a direct line, a direct voice on Senate so they can advocate for what they need. For instance, if they don't have access to healthcare services up to where they need them on the Mac campus, they need to have an ability to voice that concern to the administration so that we can move forward. They do, but it's not permanent. So right now we have somebody who is from Mac campus who's sitting on Senate, but what we could do is we could make it a seat within PGSSS that always is going to be allotted to Mac campus to ensure that going forward they always have that representation, and not just when it kind of coincides with somebody who's willing to do it. And thirdly, I want to make myself available. I want to make myself accessible so people can meet me in person, that they can voice their concerns with me, and also not always just getting them to come down to the campus. There's other campuses that we need to, as an executive body, visit and make sure that we're kind of in a more personal communication to them, so it's not just lines on an email. Thank you.
Thank you. And we had a question right here.
I have a question for both candidates, and it's a little bit more specific. So, what are your thoughts on time limitation, especially when it comes to international students who are asked to withdraw from their program and then have to come back to submit their thesis? So what are your thoughts on time limitations, especially with international students?
So it's a difficult question. I mean, there's kind of a good reason for time limits to be in place on the one hand, because I guess it is trying to use the stick to motivate students in order to finish their degree on one time. And you know, that probably has mixed results. I think the carrot is probably more effective than the stick. And so if we want students to actually graduate on time and complete their programs on time, what we have to do is make sure that they have good supervisorial relations, good funding, and a good kind of environment to make sure that they can actually finish their program. So, an unfortunate position that departments might want to take is, okay, well, we'll get rid of the time restraint. You can have as long as you want, but we'll cut off funding, and that doesn't seem to be very good at all. So I guess it's in place. I guess if we can, what we should do is try to focus on making sure that all students have access to the resources available so that they can make those time restraints and that it doesn't become a problem for them. Thank you.
For that one, I would like to open the international club, international students club, and to help them how to finish their project at the time, at the limited time. We can organize the international students, and also we can have some experts and professors and to help them to finish their project as soon as possible. I think it's like the previous international students that talk about the experience, how they can successfully finish their project. Because I talk with a lot of international students, as I was an international student before, and I know even when I first come, I even don't know how to prepare my first committee meeting. I don't know how to make the public speech. So all this is so much difficulties for the international student to deal with, plus the time limits for finish the project. So international student club will definitely help them to deal with all the academic study issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any other question? Sure.
It's not follow-up, but
is it harder to one candidate or both?
For both, I would say. So, as you may or may not know, the Open Science Initiative has begun at the Neuro Institute. I'm wondering, as Academic Affairs Officer, one of the things that the officer has been doing this year is working on the intellectual property policy. Where do you think your role is in ensuring that the Open Science Initiative is something that's followed at McGill? And do you think that this is something that should be expanded across all of the campus, all students, all departments, all faculties? And how do you think that this would be a system that's actually kept in place and is followed through?
So to be honest, I don't know very much about this, and it's something that I'd need to learn more about. So I guess what I should say is I should talk to you more, figure out like whether or not we should go forward with it. I don't want to stand up here and kind of spin yarn and act as if I know something when I don't. So just to be fairly, completely honest, I can't really speak to the matter.
I have the same thing. I didn't hear very clearly because you're so back up.
All right, any other question? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Finally, we move to the Internal Affairs Officer. Any of you have a preference who wants to go first? Sure. Okay. So, your time starts now.
Okay. So, in my little introduction, I alluded to what I'm doing now and some of my hobbies and how that's relevant to the Internal Affairs Officer position. But I'd like to elaborate on my experience a little bit. So I've been an event coordinator now for almost 8 years. So that's like a third of my life. A third of my life I've been coordinating events for various committees and associations. From my undergraduate degree at Western University, I was the volunteer coordinator for the Western Psychology Association. I helped students both in and outside of the association gain volunteer positions within different labs, but also organize a ton of different social functions and plan charities to try and create that work-life balance that any event coordinator should strive to achieve in the members of that committee. Then I went on to graduate school at the same university, Western. And there I joined the Psychology Graduate Student Association, where I did sort of the same thing, but instead of helping the transition from high school to undergraduate, I was now helping the transition for undergraduates into grad school, which is arguably a little bit more complex. There I established a buddy system, so new and prospective grad students would have somebody to talk to. And then moving on from that, 2 years ago I signed on as the social officer for the Graduate Student Association for Neuroscience. And we did sort of the same thing. We did a buddy system where incoming students would have a current neuroscience student to talk to and to waiver any concerns about upcoming grad school, whether it's their master's or their PhD. So I have an immense amount of experience in this regard, and it's something that I'm very passionate about, and I hope the hobbies that I alluded to reflect that. For this position, for the Internal Affairs Officer, it's sort of a migration for me. It's sort of the natural step. It presents a challenge in the quantity of the events that I would have to host, and the planning would be a little bit more elaborate in that sense, but I think my skills are almost underutilized in the Graduate Student Association for Neuroscience. The committee is large. Neuroscience is one of the largest departments at McGill, but I want to go bigger. And so I'll briefly go over how I sort of plan to do that if I were to be elected as the Internal Affairs Officer. So the first point is really simple. It's just maintain and preserve. And what I mean by that is the current Internal Affairs Officer, she's filming me speak right now, Mina, has done an incredible job as the Internal Affairs Officer. Massive shoes to fill. And that is so bittersweet. And that is because, well, it's sweet because really she creates a platform for me to naturally just step into and makes the job a lot easier. And it's bitter because it's hard for me to stand up here and say, like, I'm going to improve on all of these things. It's going to be massively hard to improve upon what I like to refer to as Mina's legacy, so to speak. But the things that she stood for were collaboration, fact-based decision-making, which I myself do as a part of GSAN. We collect surveys for every single event, and I was able to increase the attendance and quality of all of our events in my second year, where I was elected as the VP Social of the committee. And she also stands for inclusive events, so towards international students, towards minorities, gender equality. None of that's going to change. Where I want to step in and tweak things and improve upon is team building. So one initiative that I put forth with the GSAN committee is to have a constant democracy and to have effective leadership. And what I mean by that is you need to choose the type of leader you are depending on the context. So whether that's a transactional leader that rewards or punishes based on the type of effort put forth by the committee members towards a more charismatic and inspiring leader or a democratic leader. Democracy will always have its place, but Slack, the app that integrates a million different social media things into one spot, really helped to accomplish this and to create that team cohesion that I strive for. And the last 2 points are advertising and integration and network and support. I'll have to, unfortunately, answer some questions about those as I don't want to take any more time. Thank you.
Okay, so since we don't have much time, I'll just go over my platform.
You have your 5 minutes.
Yeah, I have. So starting with my platform mainly focuses on 3 points: collaboration, innovation and leadership, and awareness and outreach. Starting with collaboration, I would encourage collaborations between diverse, multicultural and multilingual McGill communities, as Mina is already doing, so that we can organize more inclusive and diverse events. I would also encourage interaction between McGill student services and PGSS services, much of which we already see in our existing events, such as collaborations with Walk Safe, Drive Safe, and Healthy McGill services. And yeah. And as an internal affairs officer, one of the main responsibilities is to organize events which are relevant to the whole PGSS community, and at the same time increasing visibility and accessibility of those events. So for this, I would encourage interactions with all PGSAs, Graduate Society at MAC Campus, and other PGSS members at Glenside, Douglas Institute, and also Postgraduate Association, Postdoctoral Association, to ensure that the interest of each and every group is taken into account. Also, during my brief time at McGill, I have noticed that, and also by talking to several PGSS members, I've noticed that some PGSAs are more actively involved than others, and like that's true, since this is all of neuroscience and no one from computer science. So, yeah. So for this, I will work together with Student Life Coordinator to ensure that we have a process to review the work of all PGSAs, and the PGSAs who are more actively involved are acknowledged and rewarded for the same, and maybe it will also motivate the others to follow up for this. So my second point is about leadership and innovation. Being a huge advocate for entrepreneurship, and I'm very happy that Secretary General has included this point in his platform, I want to make sure that we have a platform for graduate students to learn about opportunities for leadership, innovation, entrepreneurship, and product development. For this, I would want to work together with all executive members, reaching out to organizations in and outside McGill, so that we create a platform for networking, mentorship, and investment opportunities. My last point is about awareness and awareness and outreach. One of the main challenges we have been facing in PGSS events this year and for the last years is participation of PGSS members at our events, and making them aware of the resources that are available to them at PGSS. So say for example, we organize an event on mental health, we have to ensure that the people who are actually going through this stress at that point know about this event and are actually attending this event. For this, I'm planning to make use of social media platforms, PGSS blogs, and bi-weekly newswires to reach out to students and to create a series of stories of graduate students who have been in this situation, have struggled, and have survived, so that graduate students can connect more with these stories and know that they're not alone in this. So besides these 3 points, I just want to mention one more point about transparency at Thompson House, which, and I'm really glad that Financial Affairs Officer has mentioned this in his platform. I was just going through PGSS website and I saw that we as PGSS members pay some fee, and then there's some extra fee for booking events at Thompson House as well. As an outside member, it gets confusing as to where money is going, and so there should be a breakup of all the costs so that members who are planning to book events, and they know what is the breakup of costs and what they actually are paying for. So if elected, I will work together with Financial Affairs Officer to solve this issue of transparency. So just ending, if elected, I'll make sure that anyone who's having a hard time at McGill knows that PGSS has their back. Thank you.
Rebut, if you have any rebuttal, so you can use that for your extended pitch if you want.
Sure, yeah, I'll do that.
Okay, starts now.
All right, so let's not rebut, since I don't really like to be negative anyways. And so the last 2 points, advertising and integration, is the second last one. And so this involves just being inclusive to all associations and all of the members under PGSS. I don't like to say things and not actually have a plan to enact them. So how I plan to accomplish increased advertising and integration of the crazy number of PGSAs, I think it's like 37 or something, is by contacting the PGSA representatives of each of these associations, their VP socials, and either creating a hub where there's Google Documents or editable documents in a Facebook group, whatever that specific committee finds most reasonable, where there's a list of PGSS events, but also that specific committee's events, so that they have one place to go to, and that they know either not to schedule events when PGSS is having events at the same time, or at least they're more aware of when those events are occurring. And the last one is network and support. Neuroscience does a lot of that. We had the Neurosymposium, which was a student-made conference. We had Convergence, which was artists and scientists working together. Super weird, but really cool. And so these initiatives, PGSS can advertise through the newswire, through other social media platforms, etc. I think that's really important.
So I just want to mention 2 points. One, you mentioned about team building, that's using Slack. We already, I'm using Slack, and I know it's like a great tool, but I don't think it's a good idea to use Slack in PGSS environment, because we have been interacting with Mina and everything's going fine right now, because it's like your first point, maintenance. What's not broken, don't fix it. That's what I feel. And this second point that I want to mention is that, again, you are listening to neuroscience. I just feel so left out here. So do you have any plans, like any idea?
You can refer for more questions.
Okay, sorry. So please someone ask this question. Do you have any plans for PGSS? Same as you're doing for neuroscience.
I love it. All right, thank you so much. Any questions from the audience? Okay, let's go clockwise. Is it for both of them? Is it for one of them? Just
for both. So one of the most important roles of the Internal Affairs Officer, especially in the past years, has been orientation. Orientation is a really important event that allows for students to connect with society, to notice that we're here, and also to get them involved in representing graduate students across the university. So, as the question is for both candidates, given what the strength of orientation that you've seen this past year, what would you do to improve orientation, or what would you do to take it a step further?
Okay, so I was a student in my fall orientation, because I just came to McGill in September 2016, and I actually helped in organizing the winter orientation this winter. So definitely there can be some changes, maybe in the way students come and they interact with people, but so far, so good. Like, it's going great, and we have a great framework which our internal affairs officer has been creating. So definitely I'll get feedback from her about what she feels is working and what's not working, and talk to other PGSAs and other people, like the other graduate students who are coming in, the associations for them. And also there's a issue of Mac Campus, how because they have their own orientation, we don't organize that orientation. So yeah, it's definitely by talking and getting feedback and working on that.
So if elected as the Internal Affairs Officer, That would be my 6th or 7th orientation that I've organized, and I agree with your point. They're massively important, particularly because McGill has an amazing reputation. And I think part of that reputation is built upon the students who come to the school and experience a really fulfilling orientation. First impressions are massively important. It's sort of all part of the advertising and integration point that I had earlier, but in a more natural and fluid sense. If the students don't have a good time at orientation, they're not going to want to do anything else within the society. So there will be a massive focus towards orientation, both the fall orientation and the winter one, to sort of drive students, or rather to give them the drive to come to these orientation events.
All right, there was someone else who raised their hand. Just let's go one by one.
Hi, I'd like to ask questions specifically to everyone and then come over to them. I mean, only about the departments specifically.
Well, you can only ask the questions right now to the candidates
Okay.
in front of you right now.
Yeah. So because we are in 2017 and there's a lot of talk about representing the minorities and gender equality and international students specifically, I just wanted to know, like, PGSS stands for the whole of the Graduate Society of McGill as such, and because there is not much representation outside the neuroscience department, what would you suggest be the best option for PGSS to represent the international student body of McGill, as well as have some sort of reach directly to different departments? What would be the right thing for you, in your opinion?
Sure, because you're looking at me, I'll just go first.
No, I would actually ask the question to both of you, because I want opinions from both of you. Okay.
So, I alluded to this a little bit earlier. There's an initiative that I've already set in place within the Neuroscience Committee. Bear with me. It's just my experience. It's not that I'm only in love with neuroscience. I'm in every other department as well. And that's an editable document on a GSAN specific page where anybody, any member, whether they're a committee member or not, can go to this, and it's essentially a calendar with embedded links that go to PGSS events, but also that specific association's events. And so it serves as sort of a one-stop shop for every single event, both within and without the association. So my plan that you're asking about is to try and do that with every department, to PGSA representatives for these associations, and also talk with the VP socials of those associations to try and make that happen. If the editable document isn't something that they like, we can do something else. But I think that is very important in order to get more attendance, not just from neuroscience. I would like to meet other people other than neuroscience.
Okay, so I don't think this was pure speed dating, and for each and every organization we have events. We have events for international students, we have events pertaining to family care, who have families over here. So yeah, the audience here is from neuroscience, but we don't have events just for neuroscience, and the fact that I'm standing here from computer science is good. So we already have a lot of events for different departments, and we try to maintain that all the events throughout the year are divided equally so that each and every category is taken into account. So,
yeah, go for it.
Mina Anadolu, Internal Affairs Officer. I'd like to thank both candidates for their kind words. I'm very, very flattered. And I have no doubt that both of you are made for this job and can do this job very well. And both have very different ideas and different things to represent. My question to you is, if you could pick one group on campus to collaborate with, which one would it be and why?
And your question is to both the candidates?
Both candidates.
Thank you.
does it have to be just one group?
Well, no, but for time constraints, I'll just ask one group.
Okay, so at this point, I feel I would want to collaborate with Pure McGill. it's because we have been organizing events for them, but there has been some less participation in events for them. So I feel as PGSS, we have to ensure that they feel included in PGSS. Like during Love Sex Week, we had queer speed dating and heterosexual speed dating, which was occupied, and we had to cancel. Unfortunately, we had to cancel queer speed dating because there was just 4 people who had registered for that. So I think if there's just one group, I would definitely go with them.
I'm not allowed to choose neuroscience. I would probably, if we're talking about, sorry, I couldn't resist. I would probably have to go with grad life. I've had some experience with them in the past, and I helped them create a little snippet for their video on why McGill's amazing and why you should come here and what grad school is like and why it's sometimes awful and why it's sometimes awesome. And they are basically, in my opinion, a really cool means of advertising on behalf of PGSS. They have a blog, a vlog, and one more thing. Oh, an Instagram account. And I think that that's probably the best way to just get the message out about PGSS and to help increase both attendance and quality of the events.
Okay. Just be a bit loud and the mic is not.
Okay, so I have one general question and then specific questions for the candidates. So the general question is, the sense I get is you want to create awareness of the PGSS events, and I think that's really good. Let's presume that the awareness problem gets solved. Why do you think grad students don't show up for events? Is it primarily, what's the other big reason, and how do you plan to address that?
So I remember talking to one of my friends. I was like, why don't you show up for the event? She's like, I know that there are events. I go and click, okay, I'm going for the event. But when the day comes, I'm like, I'm too busy. I don't want to go. Graduate students have a lot of work. We can do advertising and spread awareness about all the events. But at the end, they have their time schedules. They have their work commitments, which cannot we cannot go and say no, don't do your work and come for our events. For example, we had Valentine's Day, and it was during midterm week, and probably because of the midterm and all the stress and everything going on, there were not so many participants. So this is something which we can tackle and we cannot tackle, because this is graduate students we're not talking about, and they have works and they have their thesis to write about. So maybe we can have events which about thesis, and which maybe they'll like and will come about. Yeah.
So why the attendance problem exists is sort of a vicious cycle. So you have a group of students that come to an event with a certain expectation in mind. If that expectation is not met even once, that is going to lower their expectation for subsequent events. So just say they're unhappy with the attendance or their expectation isn't met. They're less likely to go to the next event, and then the problem just snowballs from there. Your first point, if this problem could just magically be solved, that would be wonderful. And I'm going to sound like a bit of a broken record, but I think that the way to do that is by making sure that everybody knows what events are going on both in their association but also with the PGSS. Earlier this year, Mina threw a board game night. In my committee, I also threw a board game night. So we're clashing. But once I put this initiative forward, that stopped happening.
Thanks. I just have really quick questions for both candidates. So for the candidate on the right, you mentioned the possibility of rewarding PGSAs that were somewhat involved. I was just wondering logistically, how do you make sure that doesn't become that the rich faculties like neuroscience just get all the money?
Neuroscience, man.
You guys are rich.
So basically to motivate people, to motivate PGSAs who are not catching up to the work. So definitely neuroscience is doing a great job, and if we are giving clear examples, so that's definitely a plus for them. So if they get rewarded for that, I think it's because of their hard work. But maybe other PGSAs can say, oh wow, they're doing a great job. Maybe next time we can do the same thing, and maybe they'll get motivated. So it will be something which people will look forward to. That's my idea.
Okay, sorry, and quick question. Can you do a magic trick?
We'll keep it for later. Any other questions?
Saved.
right, any other questions? All right, thank you so much. So you can take your seats. So I'll make a quick announcement here, and then we have our members and friends from McGill Tribune. And if anyone else wants to ask further questions, you can stay back. So the announcement here is that there were a couple of candidates who did not show up this evening. So as per the bylaws, they had to send me a statement. They did not send me a statement. So I'll make my recommendation to the election committee, and within the next 2 days, you will hear back what is the final decision, whether we are going to oust them from the race or whether we are going to allow them to continue. That will all depend on what I decide, depending upon the rules and what the election committee doesn't concur with me or not. So